Innovation and Education: Where Good Ideas Come From by Stephen Johnson. Mistakes have been proven effective in many instances throughout history. Error is not always the negative consequence of a mistake. The history of being spectacularly right has a shadow history lurking behind it. A much longer history of being spectacularly wrong again and again. Upon the early accidental invention of the vacuum tube, Lee DeForest is quoted as saying, "I didn't know why it worked, it just did." The presentation displays some of the most important accidental discoveries in history. Perhaps the most famous error in history is Alexander Fleming's discovery of penicillin. Fleming famously discovered penicillin when the mold he infiltrated with his staph culture was left by an open window in his lab while he went on vacation. A fungus formed on his cultures, yet bacteria did not exist on those same cultures. What formed was the famous antibiotic, penicillin. As a student, Wilson Greatbatch became fascinated with the dangers of irregular heartbeats after a conversation with two surgeons while studying at Cornell. In his mind, Greatbatch imagined the human heart as a radio that could not receive or transmit signals properly. 5 years later, Greatbatch made an error while conducting an experiment with an oscillator, which ultimately simulated the beat of a human heart. A flashback to his lunch of 5 years ago and a hunch to explore led to his part in inventing the pacemaker. Lee DeForest created his device when experimenting with a gas burner and a spark gap machine. After years of experimentation, DeForest developed a hunch that gas could be employed as a wireless detector. Dubbed the Audion, this new technology amplified audio signals without degrading an audio tuner's ability to separate frequencies. DeForest's Audion later became known as the triode and the basis for the vacuum tube, most commonly used in television sets, radio receivers, and telephone switchboards. The error is needed to set off the truth, much as a dark background is required for exhibiting the brightness of a picture. William James. When we're wrong, we have to challenge our assumptions, adopt new strategies. Being wrong on its own doesn't unlock new doors in the adjacent possible, but it does force us to look for them. Louis Daguerre accidentally discovered the first camera when he placed ionized silver plates in a packed cabinet, accidentally spilling a jar of mercury before leaving the lab for the evening. Upon arrival the next day, Daguerre found the same images he previously tried to display on his plates clearly visible. The mercury fumes coaxed the images out of the plates. Joseph Priestley was shocked to find that a mint plant flourished when deprived of oxygen, unlike any mouse or spider, whose life would end with oxygen deprivation. Priestley's error led him to one of the founding discoveries of what we call ecosystem science. According to the World English Dictionary, photosynthesis is the synthesis of organic compounds from carbon dioxide and water, with the release of oxygen, using light energy absorbed by chlorophyll. Charles Goodyear spent years trying to find a way to make hot and cold resistant rubber. One day he accidentally spilled a combination of rubber, sulfur, and lead onto a hot stove. The combination became charred, but upon examination, Goodyear determined that his charred mixture was exactly what he had hoped to create for years: weather-resistant vulcanized rubber. Constantin Fahlberg tried for years to come up with an interesting purpose for coal tar. At dinner one day, Fahlberg noticed his dinner rolls were sweeter than normal, but his wife insisted they were tasted the same to her. Upon examination, Fahlberg realized that he had neglected to wash his hands, and the coal tar mixture was artificially sweetening his food. Coal tar became the main ingredient in the original saccharin. Edward Jenner accidentally created the smallpox vaccine once he realized that everyone who became infected with harmless cowpox developed an immunity to the deadly smallpox disease. Jenner soon began injecting individuals with fluids extracted from cow sores to prevent the contraction of smallpox. Atlanta pharmacist John Pemberton was trying to make a cure for the common headache. He mixed together a bunch of secret ingredients, including two main ingredients, the cocoa leaf and the cola nut. Caffeine later replaced the cocoa leaf, but the exact recipe is still a closely guarded secret. This recipe is the famous Coca-Cola. Mutations are essential to evolution. They are the raw material of genetic variation. Without mutation, evolution could not occur. Some scientists have argued that natural selection has gravitated towards a small but stable error rate in DNA transcoding, that evolution has, in a sense, tuned the error rate to the optimal balance between too much mutation and too much stability. As exemplified, error is not always the negative consequence of a mistake. As stated by Benjamin Franklin, perhaps the history of the errors of mankind, all things considered, is more valuable and interesting than that of the discoveries. Truth is uniform and narrow, it constantly exists, and does not seem to require so much an active energy as a passive aptitude of soul in order to encounter it, but error is endlessly diversified.